Welcome to the Faith Together podcast from the Center for Faith and Family at Olivet Nazarene University. We are so thankful that you have joined us today. I am Leon, and I'm here as I usually am with Lindsay.
Hey,
Hello,
Leon.
Lindsay.
Hello, everybody. Great to be with you.
Yes, glad we're able to be together today. We had such a great time last week talking about screen time, and in particular, the impact that it has on our brain. And we talked about some research that has been done.
Yes.
And we talked about some things we should be concerned about, but then also some things that we can do in response to those concerns. And I hope that you had an opportunity to join us for that. If you did not, we want to encourage you to go back and listen to last week's episode where we discussed those things so that you will get a sense of what's driving our conversation. I want to reference back to the book we mentioned last week.
Yes.
Screen Kids by Gary Chapman and Arlene Pellicane. And we're having Arlene on our podcast in 2 weeks.
2 more weeks. She'll be here with us.
Yeah, so we're excited about that, for her to share some of the things that she has learned in her research, things that she's mentioned in the book, and I suspect she's probably continuing some of that research. And there may be some things that she shares with us that are not in this book.
Yeah.
That had to be left out for one reason or another, or new discoveries that she's come across.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, we have the webinar coming, and that is May 2nd.
Yes.
7 o'clock Central
7 o'clock
Time.
Central, 8 o'clock Eastern.
8 o'clock Eastern. And for those of you way out in California, it's 6. It's 5.
5. Those of you out in the Rocky Mountains.
I should know that. That's where I'm from, so I should know how the time works.
Time zones, what are they? They're one of the most confusing things.
I'll tell you what, speaking of time zones, when I go to Tanzania right now, because they don't do the daylight savings time thing, they're 9 hours ahead of us. And so when you fly home and you arrive after being in the air for like 20 hours and you arrive on the same day that you left, it's bizarre.
That is crazy. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I have never experienced that. I've flown to Europe, but never Africa, so nothing that long.
It's quite an adventure.
That is an adventure.
All right. Well,
speaking of adventures,
yes,
screen time is quite the adventure.
It is an adventure.
Yes,
so,
we're learning a lot.
You know, one of the things I've noticed, Lindsay, that makes me really sad is when I see kids so engulfed in their screen that when people talk to them, when parents talk to them, grandparents talk to them, they don't even hear it. Right. Or if they do hear it, they ignore it because they're so engaged in what they're doing. And I think one of the signs that lets us know that we might be going down a troubling road with the amount of screen time that our kids have is how they react when we tell them to put it away or to turn it off. And whether there's a temper tantrum or frustration or anger or whatever.
Absolutely.
That might be a bit of a sign.
Yes, I think that's a sign. And I also think another sign could be when your child is put into a situation where they need to have a conversation with someone their age or someone older, and they ask you to do it for them. That, I think, is an indicator, yellow flag, possibly, that we're spending a lot of time focused on things that are very centered on them instead of centered on others.
Right. And when they would prefer to be on screens and to be with real people.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the things that I see a lot among college students is, especially after class, and you're walking down the sidewalks and you've got this group of students who are walking independent of each other.
Yes.
I mean, they're in a crowd, but they're not really engaging because everybody's looking at their phones, checking things out. Totally disengaging with the person next to them. So I tried an experiment it's not an official experiment. It was just a fun little experiment to do. So I taught a freshman ministry class last semester. And of course, I love first semester freshmen are wonderful because they have no clue what's happening,
right?
what they're in store for, what's ahead of them, all those kind of things. And so after maybe it was the first day of class or the second day of class, I'm not sure which, I just said to them, what would you all think if we just made it a policy of our classroom this semester that from the moment you walk in the door, no phones?
Wow.
And they said, yeah, that'd be good. And one of the things that I discovered is the chatter before class was wonderful.
Uh-huh.
And it actually took me oftentimes multiple times of saying, okay, folks, it's time for us to get started. Hello, it's time for us to get started. Because they were so engaged with each other, as opposed to other classes that I teach where there's very little conversation because everybody sits in their chair
and
waiting for class
phone.
to start on their phone for the last fix that they can get before class begins.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And I see it as a resident director. We have Sunday nights, I've shared with you, our nights that we open up our home and we have dinner together and welcome them in. And we have made a no phone policy where it's, when we're sitting together, let's talk with one another.
Yeah.
And it's been really healthy, but it's been a challenge.
Yeah, it is. It is a bit of a challenge. So that leads us to our conversation today, right?
Yeah, screen time and relationships.
And relationships, right? Yeah,
because it really affects us. It affects our relationships. It affects our friendships. It affects everything. And so we've last week shared with you that there's good news and there's bad news when it comes to screen time.
Yeah, and you're a bad news first person.
I am. Thank you. Yeah.
So
I'm going to start with the bad news.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the bad news as far as screen time and relationships go. We see that when you are on screens for a majority of time, that kids begin to become more me-centered versus others-centered. That the screens, they are all about them. They're about giving them the rewards that they're after, whether it's a video game, it's about giving them the show that they're looking forward to watching. It's immediate reward, immediate satisfaction for them, all around their preferences, what they like to see. And it, I think we've all been there. You just kind of like zone out when you're really on a screen engaged with something. You don't notice what's happening around you. And so we want our kids to not be focused only on themselves. We want them to see others around them. We want them to be able to have conversation with one another appropriately. And so that leads us to talking a little bit about empathy and what empathy can mean in kids' friendships.
Yeah. So, the sense of empathy, the sense of feeling for others.
Right.
Right. And a lot of the research says that kids who spend a significant amount of time on screens have little to any empathy for others. And so one of the things that we can do as we get into maybe some of the good news here ahead of time is that we engage. The more we engage with our kids personally, the more empathy that they have for those around them.
Right. And by personally, it means having live, eye-to-eye, in-person conversations.
That's right.
And let's just say too, Leon, I mean, I feel bad for this generation of kids because we have kind of set them up for failure because of all the screens that have been required through COVID. And now, that's just changed everything. So it is a part of their realities that wasn't a part of a lot of our realities growing up.
Yeah, and for this generation that's growing up now, they've known nothing other than technology, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so for us, when we grew up, when I grew up, it was Pong. Do you remember Pong? Do you even know what that? You've heard of it.
I've heard of it. Yes.
Okay, well that makes me feel old.
Oh, no.
So Pong was like a little
experienced, Leon.
board. It was a little
You're experienced with
it was a
that.
little device. It had 2 knobs on it. So you had to sit really close to each other because you each had 1 knob. And you had a little paddle on the screen and a ball that went back and forth. And you used the paddles to bounce the ball back to each other. That was
Yeah.
like the beginning of video games.
Right. So
Right?
it was a luxury, maybe, technology
I
for
think
you?
it was early on, yeah.
So I think that's the case. I think as I was growing up, it was more of a accessory, right? It was, okay, I can call this person before I leave this place, let them know I'm on my way, and then I put the phone away.
Yeah.
It was not what this generation now carries their phones, their tablets, whatever it might be. It's like a part of them. It's as much a part of them as their arm is to their body.
Yeah, the anxiety that takes place when I realize I've gone off to school and I left my phone at home.
Yes.
Parents who get a call, then the child's gone to the school office to call the parents to bring them their phone.
Yep.
Because they can't make it through.
Yeah, it's like a security blanket.
Yeah.
So we see those trends and we know that this is a reality for them, but nothing can replace that in-person conversation, eye contact, connection that comes from just taking our eyes off ourselves and looking around at others.
Yeah. And we know we've tried to replace that. I mean, we think that the friends that we have through technology, Facebook, whatever it may be, that I have hundreds, maybe even thousands of friends that I'm connected to, and I'm more lonely than I've ever been.
Yeah.
Which is really a shame, and I think an issue that we're dealing with in the world we live today.
Right. And we're seeing kids texting more than having conversations with others. And so, in the book, they tell us when you text, you miss facial expressions, tone, volume of voice, eye contact, and those pauses let you know if something isn't right.
Yeah. And then it becomes a substitute.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't have to learn how to engage someone face to face because I can resort to a text or a phone call where I hope they don't answer so I can just leave a message on the answering machine and I don't have to actually address someone personally.
Right. So the bad news in all of this is we're not setting them up for success for their future. When they go into the professional working world, just in their future relationships, being able to have conversations with others is so very important.
Yeah. And we want to reinforce something we said earlier, we said it last week, and that is this is not an attempt to say that technology is a bad thing in and of itself and that we should kind of get rid of it, that we should kind of move back to a monastery and isolate ourselves from the technology of the world that we live in today. What we're saying is the more we understand the impact that technology and screens have on the lives of our children and our families, then the more intentional we can be about how we use them. So like for instance, my grandkids, they have their tablets, they're 5 and 6, and they have their tablets and they have limitations on how long they can play. But one of the things that started, I was actually visiting them recently, and I was on my phone doing my Duolingo that I mentioned, learning Swahili for my trip back to Tanzania this summer. And my grandson saw that, and he said, "Papa, let me help you with that." And so Cooper and I are trying to do some Swahili together, and then we discovered that Duolingo actually has reading as part of the app.
Wow.
And you can kind of identify the reading level of your child, and they will Duolingo will read books to them. Then the kids have to read it, and then there's the little games that they play with words. So it's teaching them how to spell, teach them how to read words at their level. And so one of the things that we want to communicate is that not all screen time is equal. So that's very, very different than them playing a video game.
It is. Well, and let's talk about the connection that was made for you and Cooper, right?
Right.
Where he and you are doing it together. And so the screen is there and that's appropriate and you're learning, but then also you're looking at one another and you're reading that connection together through that conversation of saying, oh, look what we're learning and look at this. So there is a way to engage with the technology that isn't just me centered.
Yeah. And by doing it together, it also puts me in a place as the adult to make sure that what they're seeing is appropriate. And if it gets on the borderline of inappropriate, I get to have a conversation.
Right.
Let's talk about this a little bit. What did you think of that? Just like we do when we watch movies, right? So I can remember times with my kids where we would be watching a movie and something would happen that I did not anticipate, which then led to a conversation. Let's talk about this. As followers of Jesus, how do we feel about what we just saw?
Right.
You know, those kinds of things, rather than isolating them from it, walking through it with them.
Right. Absolutely. So I'm ready for some good news now.
I think we've hit on a little bit of it, but let's jump in.
We'll just go into some more.
Deeply. Okay.
Yeah. So we know that conversation in real life, real time, breeds connection. And so we came across an article that talks about 10 screen-free things you can do with your kids over a break. So whether it's summer break, spring break, fall break, 10 screen-free things to do with your kids. So I'm just going to read through this list really quickly here. And Leon, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these suggestions.
Okay, here we go.
So we've got go shopping for a brand new toy or game.
I like that. Can I just add something here?
Yeah.
So are you familiar with cooperative games?
Yes.
Have we talked about this?
You shared about it with me a few weeks ago.
So this has become the new thing for my wife and I, is finding these cooperative games that when we go visit our grandkids, we take one with them, with us, and we play it. And the point of a cooperative game is, rather than competition on who wins and who loses, you have to work together to beat the game.
Got it.
So it's teaching skills. So like one of the ones we played recently, I'm going to go blank on the name, but there's like thieves, and you get clues and you have to try to figure out who the thief is.
Ooh, fun.
And if you don't get the thief, then the fox. Oh, it's Outfoxed is the name of it.
Yeah.
We're not getting any kind of kickback from that company from that, but this is a good game. And the fox moves when you roll the dice and it doesn't work out the way you want, and the fox moves through the board. And if the fox gets to the end, the fox wins.
Yeah.
Or if you guess the wrong thief, the fox wins. And so you have to work together and say, okay, here's a clue that the thief is not wearing. So we eliminate these, and you do it all together. And it was so much fun to watch my grandkids, who are fairly competitive, as brothers and sisters are, really work hard together and encourage each other and do it together. So it's fun.
Yes,
so cooperative games in particular.
Yeah. And games are just such a great way to connect.
Oh, they are.
Especially when maybe it doesn't come easily to have just connection in conversation. Games are a great way to start that. Okay, and then I should also say these ideas come from the Parent Q blog. So if you're familiar with that, it's Parent Q, C-U-E, parentq.org. They've got lots of great tips on their blog. Second one is take a day trip. A week-long vacation may not be in the budget, but day trips can be fun and affordable to experience something new. So not having screens, but going and exploring somewhere new that you can drive to, a park, who knows, whatever's close by.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
This is kind of in that same theme. Become a tourist in your own city. So I grew up in the Bay Area of California, and I look back now and I think of all of the things I didn't do that people go to the Bay Area of California to do. I grew up there, and I didn't experience it myself. I didn't spend near as much time in the redwood forest, which were like 20 minutes away, as people who will fly from here to California to experience the redwoods. And here they were in my backyard, and I rarely went there. So being more aware of what goes on in your own town and being a tourist. Yeah, your city is likely filled with some sort of attraction. So just pick one and go and explore it. I like it. Next was learn something new together. Do you know how to knit? What about ceramics? Have you tried these things? Maybe your kids haven't either. Use this time off to learn something new with the help of a local class, or maybe you watch a YouTube video that teaches you something new, but you're watching it together.
Yeah. And maybe find something that your child really enjoys that maybe you don't enjoy as much, or something that they're better at than you are.
Mm-hmm. So they can help teach you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really good. Another one is a theme day. Themes have the power to transform the ordinary into interesting. I love that.
Schools are good at this.
Yes, they are.
With elementary schools in particular, where they have a theme day.
Yeah. So choose a theme, pajama day, fancy dinner night, or even going back to having a game night could be a good way to avoid screens and just have some fun together. This next one is interesting, Leon. It says kids swap. There's likely a parent friend who's feeling exactly as you are about whatever break that you're on. So team up with them to trade off kids for an afternoon or day, and it'll give you a much needed break and give your kids some variety and ways to interact with another family.
I'm thinking about, when you get your kids back, you realize how much you appreciate them.
Yeah, it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
That's interesting. I've never thought of doing something like that.
Yeah. Next, they share sleepovers. Never underestimate the power of a good old-fashioned sleepover. Kids still very much prefer this option with their friends. Of course, you want to have good, safe boundaries with sleepovers and good, safe boundaries with screens at sleepovers as well. You know, you want those to be trusted people in your life. Another idea is spending time in nature. Kids have likely been spending a lot of time indoors, so heading outside can be a welcome change. Plan a hike, picnic, or send them out with sidewalk chalk. Nothing is too small. So that kind of goes to that unstructured play, just giving them time to be and enjoy their environments. And then this next point, we've talked a lot about this. Let your kids figure it out. So there's an unspoken rule parents live by that it's our job to keep our kids entertained 24/7. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think it's just important to let that go, Leon. Like, we are not cruise directors.
Yeah, go down to the basement and occupy yourself.
Yes.
You know, there's plenty of things to play with down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's actually healthy for them.
Sure.
When kids are left to figure things out on their own, they become more creative. They tap into those problem-solving skills, and they find ways to connect with others, you know, in healthy environments. And then the last one here says, create a family photo album. Head to the store, purchase a Polaroid or some kind of instant camera, and encourage your kids to take pictures throughout the week. Get together at the end and see what that, break time looked like together.
Those are creative.
Yeah, some good
just
ideas.
Fun little ideas.
Yes. So I think all of these remind us that no matter the personality of your kids, whether they're extroverted or introverted, they can still succeed in relationships and in conversations. I think that's just important to indicate that every child and every family, as we've been saying, are different. And so it's going to look different what it means for them to interact and have healthy relationships, but we can all do it. And we can do it with healthy habits like these we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so let's look at something that I think might be helpful for many parents. Especially, I can think that maybe parents are saying, okay, my kids are this particular age. What is healthy for my kids at this age when it comes to screen time?
Yes.
And so rather than us tell you our opinion, let's go to the American Academy for Pediatrics, the AAP, and they have some recommendations on screen time based on the age of your children. And this is not necessarily a Christian organization. This is an organization that is very concerned with the welfare of children. They do a lot of research, and they understand in this subject matter the impact that screens have on children. So here's their recommendations. So for children younger than 18 months, they encourage that you just avoid all forms of screens.
Wow.
Okay. So handing them your phone to occupy them, to let them watch a cute little video or something like that is not healthy for them.
Right. Because we know in the first 3 years of life, the brain changes more than any other time.
Wow. Yeah. That's such a significant time during those first 3 years. Okay. So for children 18 months to 2 years, choose high quality programming and watch it with your children. So this would be more something like the Duolingo thing that we were talking about, where they can read together, you do it together with them. There's something productive. Their brains are active rather than their brains being passive.
That's
and I think that's a pretty important distinction.
Right. It's including, like we talked about in the last episode, all 5 senses.
That's right.
In that experience.
Yeah.
You're in it together, and they're not just inhaling it on their own.
Okay. That's good. So 18 months, nothing. 18 months to 2 years, high quality programming with the assistance of a parent. For children 2 to 5 years of age, they say that screens should be limited to 1 hour per day of high quality programs. So maybe we have to define high quality programs. Is that kind of what we were just talking about?
I think so. I think high quality programs are programs that reflect your values as a family. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to watch things that model the relationships that you do value, model how you treat others in your family. So I don't want to share any names of shows as far as, I don't want to play favorites of anything, but I think it's important as a family and as parents, we take a look at what it is that we're watching and make sure it lines up with the values of your family. And
I think high quality programs would also include learning experiences, whether that's learning relational things, learning morals that are similar to or are consistent with our family morals and values. Yeah. Those kinds of things, right?
Yes. And I know as a children's pastor, there's so much media out there for kids that you can teach different things with and show and give. And there's some companies that have done a great job of like curating high quality programming with Christian values. So, I think about like Minnow Kids or Right Now Media. We're not getting any kickback from them, but they curate, quality Christian-based programs for families. So I think about things like that too.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 to 5 year olds, a limit to 1 hour, and quality programming, and it should be done in the presence of a parent.
Right.
So I think one of the things I'm hearing as we walk through these is that our screens should not be babysitters.
Yes.
That when screens are used for these younger children in particular, it should be done with a parent as they're learning and experiencing together.
Yes.
Okay. So for children 6 and older, they recommend that you place consistent limits on the time spent using media and the types of media that they use. So a little more freedom here. They're recommending that you set limits. And so this might be one of the hardest things to do because, the kids are occupied, they're quiet. I'm getting a break from the chaos of the day as a parent. Everybody's content. There's no fighting going on, and everybody's immersed in their screens. And it goes back to what we've talked about back when we were talking about in our healthy parenting series, that being a parent's hard. Mm-hmm. It's really hard, and parents have to make decisions for their kids that are in their kids' best interest, not necessarily what's convenient for the parent or for the child. All right, then we move. So that's 6 years old and older. It seems like the standard is pretty consistent. Whatever the age is, that there are limits that are set, and then you hold to those limits. Make sure that the media does not take place in place of adequate sleep, physical activity, or other behaviors that are necessary for good health. So it can't replace, playing Madden football on your Xbox doesn't replace going out and playing football.
Right.
Yeah, you need the physical activity as well. And then they recommend that families, and this is consistent with what we've already talked about before, Lindsay, is designate media-free times, such as dinner time, driving time, as well as media-free locations, such as the bedroom. We talked about that a little bit last week, about the importance of protecting the bedroom for our children from their media.
That's right. And I think that whatever media kids are watching, what keeps coming back to me, Leon, is going back to that high quality that's available, making sure that it's something that can be interactive, that can teach them something. It's not something that doesn't have their participation in some way. Yeah.
And I don't think that means it shouldn't be fun.
Right.
I think there is a place for kids 6 and older, as the AAP said, for just regular video games or YouTube videos or movies or whatever, with a time limit. And I think one of the things that I've discovered that I've not really thought about, and this is rather simplistic, I don't know why I've not thought about it before, but all screen time is in the same category. So it's not like, okay, you get an hour on your iPad and then you can watch TV for an hour and then you can get on the computer for an hour. It's limitation of all screens. However you decide as a family, this is what the limits are going to be. When that limit is hit, we're done. And then we interact with each other. We do whatever we're going to do.
Yeah. And I also want to encourage, just for preschool parents out there in those ages 2 to 5, if you found yourself, giving a device to your preschooler and having them sit and watch the media without you, and maybe it's hard just to, stop doing that right away. We know that it's hard, and it's not maybe,
Sure.
It is hard. And so finding a way to just sit with them for, let's say, an episode and interact, just start somewhere, I think is a really important tool to remember as we have these conversations, that as the parent, you are in control and you can take the time to steer this ship, so to speak, in a new direction.
Yeah. We often say that we're not trying to overwhelm parents with all these great things that they have to do. To find one thing that you think, we could do that. Let's try that and see how it works for us. Parenting, as we said earlier, is hard work. We need breaks. Sometimes technology just becomes the default break for us. So maybe we just decide, okay, you know what? Technology is not going to be the break. I can send my child off to do Legos or do something productive that isn't necessarily academic, but still productive in their brain development and in helping them learn how to interact relationally with others, especially brothers and sisters.
Yes, that's good.
All right. So I'd like for us to kind of wrap this up with a paragraph from the chapter from our book that deals with screen time and relationships. And I hope this will be an encouragement to you. Here's what our authors say. Parents must think about the purpose of technology in our homes and then design a media plan that supports those goals. Once you have a plan, stick with it. Your kids probably won't say, "Mom, it's so great we're cutting back to just half an hour of YouTube a day. That's going to give me so much more time to get my work done." No, your child is going to kick and scream and exert tremendous pressure on you so you'll cave in. Imagine yourself as a redwood tree, tall, immovable, with roots underneath the surface. No matter what your child says, you will not be moved. I thought that was a pretty good encouragement to just say, okay, parents, set the standard, set some rules based on your family's, what's the language they use? Your family's purpose.
Yes.
And
I love the idea of designing a media plan.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk more about that with Arlene Pelican.
Okay, great.
I believe that's going to be part of her topics with us here at the webinar. But I think it's so important to just start somewhere, try something. And once you do, if it doesn't work, try again.
Yep.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But stay strong.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever
stay
your
strong.
conviction is, stay strong in it.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. I know this is a little heavy. I hope we've not laid the guilt trip on you. That's not our intent.
Not at all.
Our hope is that you have found something that would be helpful, that you understand a little bit better of what happens to your child's brain, what happens to the relationship your child has, that are a direct result of screen time. And hopefully this will help you to make your children be a little more like Christ. After all, the whole purpose of the podcast is to help parents pass their faith to their kids. And part of that faith passing includes being responsible for things that might bring danger into the lives of our children. So we hope you're encouraged today. We'd love to hear from you about things that you're trying that are working. You can reach us at olivet.edu or at our website at
centerff.com.
Yes. And may the Lord bless you, keep you, and give you peace. You've been listening to the Faith Together podcast from the Center for Faith and Family at Olivet Nazarene University. Sign up for additional resources at centerff.com. When building faith, we are better together.